This video contains images and content generated or assisted by artificial intelligence.
The aisle had frozen around her as the captain towered over the woman in 1A, his voice dripping with contempt while passengers filmed in stunned silence. He thought she was powerless, just another black woman he could bully into the back row. What he didn't know, what no one in that cabin knew except her, was that every cruel word he spoke was sealing his own fate. Because in less than an hour, the man abusing his authority would discover he wasn't humiliating a random passenger. He was humiliating the person who controlled his entire career, and the fallout waiting for him would shatter his world. The sterile, chaotic symphony of JFK International's Terminal 4 was a sound Elena Vance knew well. It was the sound of her father's legacy, a legacy she had transformed from 2 struggling cargo planes in Omaha into Aura Airlines, the world's most talked about premium carrier. At 42, Elena Vance was a ghost in her own machine. Forbes might know her face, but the thousands of employees under her, they knew the brand. They knew the sleek silver and white livery and the promise of attainable luxury. They didn't know this woman in a soft grey cashmere hoodie, simple black slacks and worn leather loafers, her hair pulled back into a simple, elegant bun. She wore no makeup. Her only jewellery was a plain gold band her father had left her. She was flying incognito, as she often did not in her private Gulfstream, but on Aura Flight 101, JFK to London. She was checking the soft product, the new bedding, the updated menu, the crew's demeanour. She was booked in 1A, a lie-flat flagship business seat. Boarding was as usual, a mess of human anxiety. Elena settled in her small, worn leather duffel at her feet. She smiled at the flight attendant, a woman in her late 40s with a name tag that read Brenda, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Can I get you a pre-departure beverage, Mom champagne orange juice?" Brenda asked, her voice a practiced tiny monotone. "Just water, please." "Still is fine," Elena said. Brenda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. The passenger in 1A wasn't a champagne passenger. She was a water passenger. In Brenda's 15 years, this was a code. It meant low maintenance or doesn't belong here. She mentally categorized Elena and moved on. Elena watched her. The observations were already starting. Crew seems tired. Smile isn't genuine. She's judging the passengers. The cabin hummed. The final passengers were straggling in. Then the energy at the aircraft door shifted. 2 men, both in their early 50s, swaggered down the jet bridge. One was in the crisp 4-stripe uniform of an Aura captain. The other wore a pilot-style polo shirt with a competitor's logo, United, and carried a pilot's flight bag. They were laughing loud and obnoxious. The man in uniform was Captain Gregory Greg Raw. He was a legacy pilot from an airline Aura had acquired. He was vocal, famously difficult, and had a union file thick with minor grievances. He was also the captain of this very flight. The man in the polo was Captain John Hatcher, a buddy pass traveller, Raw's old drinking buddy. Rock stopped at the galley, his eyes scanning the manifest on Brenda's tablet. He looked into the business class cabin, his gaze sweeping over the passengers, and then it stuck on Elena in 1A. He leaned into Brenda. Elena couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. He was pointing at the manifest, then at Elena. Brenda's face went pale. "Greg, I can't," Elena heard Brenda whisper. She's ticketed. It's full." Rock let out a sigh of pure theatrical exasperation. "Brenda, are you the senior flight attendant, or are you just here to pour mimosas? Handle it. I want Johnny in a good seat for the hop." He clapped Hatcher on the back. "Don't worry, pal. We'll get you sorted." Hatcher, smug, leaned against the bulkhead. The entire boarding process had stopped behind him. Brenda Ollie took a deep breath, pasted on her failing smile, and walked the 3 steps to 1A. Her hands were visibly trembling. "Mom," she started, her voice an octave too high. I'm so sorry. It appears there's been a computer glitch, a seating error." Elena looked up from her water. "An error." "My boarding pass seemed to work fine." "Yes." "Well," Brenda stammered, "this seat, it's actually been blocked for a crew member, for a deadheading pilot. We're going to have to move you." Elena's internal customer experience audit just went from minor notes to 5-alarm fire. She kept her voice even. "Move me where the cabin seems full. We have a lovely seat for you in the back." 34B. Brenda said, her voice cracking. 34B. A middle seat in the last row of economy by the lavatories. Elena's blood didn't boil. It turned to ice. She knew this play. She had seen it happen to others. "No," Elena said simply. "Not I'm sorry. No, just no, Mum." Brenda's voice hardened. The fear was gone, replaced by the defensive posture of someone in the wrong. "You're holding up the flight. The captain needs this seat." The captain, Elena said, looking past Brenda, is in the cockpit. "That man," she gestured to Hatcher, "is not. This is my seat. I am a ticketed passenger. I am not moving." The cabin was now dead silent. The man in Tusi, a sharp-eyed man in a Xenia suit, was watching intently. Brenda, completely out of her depth, turned and fled to the galley. She looked at Rock. She said, "No." Captain Rock's face, a road map of sun damage and barroom veins, darkened. She said, "What?" "She's refusing to move." Brenda whimpered. Rock muttered a curse. He pushed past her, his heavy boots thumping on the carpeted floor. He planted himself in front of 1A, his large, imposing frame blocking the light. He was using his physical presence to intimidate. He didn't make eye contact with Elena. He addressed the top of her head. "Ma'am, this is Captain Raw. You were just given a lawful crew instruction by my flight attendant. You need to take seat 34B now." This was it, the moment of truth. Elena finally looked up, her eyes clear and steady met his. "Captain," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "are you telling me to give up my paid, confirmed first-class seat for that man?" She nodded towards Hatcher. Raw's temper snapped. The mum was gone. "Listen, lady. I don't know who you think you are, but on this plane, I am the final authority. This is my buddy pass rider, Captain Hatcher, and he's going to sit here. We need him rested for a flight tomorrow. It was a lie and a bad one. Buddy pass riders got what was available. They didn't bump revenue passengers." "And you Rock," continued his voice, dropping to a low, venomous growl, his face mere inches from hers. He looked at her hoodie, her simple pants. "You clearly don't belong in this seat anyway. I'm sure you'll be more comfortable in the back, where your kind usually sits." The words hung in the air, thick, poisonous, and unmistakable. It wasn't just a slight. It was a racial-profiled, classist, and sexist sledgehammer. Brenda Ollie winced and looked away. Hatcher in the galley chuckled. The man in 2C, Mr. Peterson, audibly gasped. Did he just say that Eleanor Vance stood up? She was a foot shorter than Rock, but in that moment, she towered over him. The entire cabin was filming. "Captain Rock," she said, a voice ringing with an authority that stunned him into silence. "You've just made a very, very big mistake." Raw, high on his own power, mistook her confidence for a threat. "Oh, I made a mistake. No, you made a mistake. You are now a non-compliant passenger. Brenda, call airport security. I'm having this woman removed from my aircraft." He smirked. "You'll be spending the night at the Port Authority jail, sweetheart." The cabin door was still open. The jet bridge was still attached. 2 Port Authority officers, looking bored and tired, were already halfway down the ramp, summoned by Brenda's panicked call. "Captain," the lead officer, Officer Porris, asked, "What's the problem?" "This passenger," Raw said, pointing a thick finger at Elena, "is non-compliant, refusing a crew instruction. I want her off now." Elena looked at Officer Porris. She didn't look at Rock. She spoke to the law. "Officer," she said calmly, "this captain is attempting to illegally remove me, a ticketed passenger, from my confirmed seat, one to give it to his non-revenue friend. It's a crew rest seat," Rock bellowed. "A lie," Elena said. "Ask to see the manifest. His friend is John Hatcher, traveling on a Z-Class buddy pass. I am Elena Vance, traveling on a full-fare J-Class ticket, J1A. You know the rules, officer. Revenue passengers cannot be involuntarily bumped for non-revenue travelers, especially not after boarding." Officer Porris, a 20-year veteran, knew exactly what this was. He looked at Rock's smug face, at Hatcher, trying to look invisible in the galley, and at this small, articulate, and supremely calm woman. "Captain," Porris said, his voice weary. "She's right. You can't do that. That's not a lawful instruction. You're going to create a major incident." Raw's face went purple. He was being questioned in his world. "Are you telling me how to run my aircraft, officer? She's a security threat. She's aggressive." Mr. Peterson, in 2C, suddenly spoke up, his voice booming with the authority of a Manhattan courtroom. "That is a demonstrable, slanderous lie. I am Arthur Petersonen, a partner at Sullivan and Cromwell, and I have been recording this entire interaction. So has the young woman in Horde D. This woman has been a model of decorum. You, Captain, have been the aggressor. You just told her, and I quote, 'Your kind doesn't belong here.' Officer, I am a witness. If you remove her, you are an accessory to a civil rights violation." The entire cabin erupted in murmurs. Officer Porris looked at Rock, then at the lawyer, then at the half-ozen phones, pointed at them. This was a powder keg. Captain Porris said, his voice now steel, "We are not removing this passenger. You need to close that door and fly your plane, or you are going to be explaining this to the FAA." Raw was trapped. He was humiliated. He had lost control. He looked at Elena with a hatred so pure it was almost tangible. He couldn't remove her. But he was still the captain. He could still make her pay. "Fine," he snarled. He turned to Elena. "You want to stay on this flight. You'll do it from 34B. That's my final word. You either move to that seat, or I'm cancelling the flight. Everyone goes home. Your choice, princess." He was holding the plane hostage. He knew she would back down. Elena looked at the other passengers, the ones going to funerals, to weddings, to business meetings. They were looking at her, their expressions a mix of pity and frustration. They just wanted to go. She was the CIO. She could end this. She could pick up her phone, make one call, and have Raw's career vaporized before the wheels even left the ground. But she didn't. Because this wasn't about her Elena Vance, the CEO. This was about Ms. Vance, passenger in 1A. This was about the customer experience, and she needed to see from start to finish just how broken her system was. She needed to know what it felt like to be completely and utterly powerless, humiliated by her own employee on her own product. She nodded once. "All right," she said. The cabin sighed in collective relief. Raw's smirk returned. Triumphant, he had won. He motioned to 1A. "Johnny, the seat's all yours, buddy." Hatcher, looking slightly green, skewered past Eleanor and plopped into the warm seat. He didn't make eye contact. "Get your bag," Rock barked at Eleanor. Eleanor Vance picked up her simple leather duffel. "And Mum, Brenda Ali," said, her voice dripping with a newfound spiteful confidence. "You'll have to put that bag in the overhead. There's no room for carry-ons in 34B. Elena didn't say a word. She walked out of the premium cabin. She walked past the Aura Comfort Pluses section. She walked past the galley. She walked down the long, narrowing tube of the economy cabin. All 33 rows of it. Every eye was on her. It was the longest walk of her life. Each step was a fresh humiliation. Passengers averted their gaze. One woman handed her a sympathetic tissue. She finally reached row 34. The lights were dimmer here. The smell of the lavatory was sharp. 34B. A narrow, non-relining middle seat jammed between a 300 Dleblesbein man who was already asleep and snoring, and a young, terrified mother, Jessica, who was clutching a 6-month-old baby. "Sorry," Elena murmured, squeezing past the mother. She sat down. The seat was stiff. Her knees were pressed against the seat back in front of her. Up front in the galley she heard the clink of glasses. She heard Brenda O'Malley laugh. "Captain Champagne, or should I get the 18-year-old Glenlivet, break out the good stuff, Brenda?" Rock's voice boomed. "We've got cause to celebrate." The cabin door thumped shut. The engines began to whine. Elena Vance, CEO and founder of Aura Airlines, closed her eyes. It was going to be a very, very long 7 hours. The first hour of the flight was a special kind of hell. Captain Rock, it seemed, was not done. Before takeoff, the PA system crackled. It was Brenda's voice, saccharine and false. "Ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize for our slight delay. It seems we had a disruptive passenger who needed to be relocated for the comfort and safety of all. We are all sorted now and should be in the air shortly." She had just painted Elelanina as the villain to the entire plane. Elena felt the eyes of the economy cabin on her. The whispers. The man beside her, Mr. Henderson, snorted in his sleep, and his arm flopped onto her lap. She gently pushed it off. The baby in 34C, little Leo, started to cry. The mother, Jessica, was shaking, trying to shush him. "Shh. Leo, please be quiet. Don't worry about it," Elena said, her voice low. "He's a baby. It's what they do." Jessica looked at her, her eyes wide with gratitude and stress. "It's just they look at you, so I'm flying alone. My husband's in the military, stationed in Germany. This is my first time flying with him." "You're doing great," Elena said. As the plane climbed to cruising altitude, the service began. Up in 1A, the scene was decadent. Arthur Peterson, the lawyer in 2C, watched with disgust. He was taking notes. 10:32 p.m. He typed into his phone, "Captain Hatcher in 1A and Captain Raw visiting from cockpit. Is this even legal? Are being served top-shelf whiskey. Flight attendant Brenda is fing over them. They are loud. In the back, the service was different. The cart slammed to a halt at their row. The flight attendant didn't even look at Eleanor. "Drink water, please," Eleanor said. "We're out of bottles. Just tap." The attendant shoved a plastic cup of lukewarm water at her and moved on. The baby Leo began to wail, a full-on, ear-splitting scream. "Mom!" The flight attendant snapped at Jessica. "You need to control your child. You're disturbing the other passengers." "I'm trying," Jessica said, tears welling. "I think he's hungry. Can I get some warm water to heat his bottle?" "The service is over. I can't. You'll have to wait." The attendant pushed the cart away. Jessica began to cry silently. Elena had seen enough. This was her airline. This was her name. She unbuckled. She stood up in the narrow aisle. "Excuse me," she called out. The flight attendant ignored her. Elena walked to the back galley. The 2 flight attendants for the economy cabin were there scrolling on their phones. "Excuse me," Elena said louder. They looked up annoyed. "Passenger, you need to be in your seat." "I will," Elena said. "But first, that mother in 34C needs warm water for her baby's bottle, and you will get it for her. We don't. We can't." Elena pointed to the hot water dispenser for tea. "You can. You will. Now." There was something in her voice, the same steel that had silenced Rock, The flight attendants' cowed scrambled. They poured hot water into a cup. Elena took it. "Thank you." She walked back to 34C. She held the cup while Jessica warmed the bottle. The baby ate. The baby went to sleep. Jessica looked at Elena as if she were an angel. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "My name is Elena," she said, sitting back down in the cramped middle seat. "I'm Jessica." For the next 4 hours they talked. Elena held Leo while Jessica used the restroom. She got her an extra blanket. She asked her about her life, her husband. She didn't just pretend to care. She did care. This was the aura experience she wanted. Not the fing service of the front, but real human connection and dignity. Mr. Henderson on her other side woke up. He was a construction foreman from Queens. He'd seen the whole thing. "That pilot's a piece of work," he grumbled. "And that flight attendant. What you did for that kid, that was real class lady." An alliance had formed in row 34. The three of them, the CEO, the military wife, and the construction worker against the arrogance of the front. Meanwhile, Arthur Peterson in 2C was also busy. He had a witness. He leaned over to the young woman in 4D, the one who had also been filming. "I'm Arthur Peterson. I'm a lawyer. Can you airdrop me that video? I'm building a case." "Absolutely," she said. "I'm Sarah Jenkins. I'm a producer for the New York Times. A lawyer and a reporter. Rock's fate was sealing itself, 35,000 FT in the air." But Elena didn't know about this. She was just trying to get through the flight. As the plane began its descent over the Irish Sea, the cabin prepared for landing. Elena had one last move to make. She was not landing as passenger 34B. She caught the eye of the one decent flight attendant, a young man named Mark, who had looked ashamed all night. "Mark," she whispered, flagging him down. "Can I ask a favor?" "Of course, Mom," he said. "I need a pattern and a piece of your crew paper, the official letterhead." "Mum, I could get in trouble." "You're already in trouble," Elena said, not unkindly. "The whole flight is. But you, Mark, have been kind. Trust me, this is the right side of history to be on." He looked at her, then at the sleeping baby, then at the front of the plane. He nodded. He tore a sheet from his notepad and handed her a pen. As the plane's landing gear engaged with a heavy thunk, Elena Vance began to write. It wasn't a complaint. It was a series of directives. She wrote to Robert Knight, her head of European operations, who would be on the ground in London. She wrote to Mr. Harrison, the LHR station manager. Her note was simple. Robert Code read, "Meet Flight 101 at a remote stand. Not the gate. Have Metropolitan Police Airport Authority and a full corporate legal team on the tarmac. No one deplanes. No one. Detain Captain Gregory Rock and F.A. Brenda O'Malley for questioning. Detain passenger John Hatcher for interference with the flight crew. I am in 34B. EV, she folded the note as the plane touched down with a jolt. Mark passed her row. Mark, she said the second. The second. You are at the gate. Take this note. Do not give it to Brenda. Give it to the ground agent. Tell them it is a must-ride document for the LHR station manager. Use those exact words. Must ride. Your job depends on it. Mark's hand trembled, but he took the note. Yes, ma'am. The plane taxied. Up front, Raw's voice came over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow. Apologies for the eventful flight. We hope you enjoy your stay. He was still smug. He had no idea that he wasn't just landing a 7 Navali 7. He was landing in the middle of a corporate explosion he had lit himself. The giant Boeing 777 didn't taxi to Terminal 3. Instead, it made a long, meandering turn, rolling past the bustling terminals, and came to a stop at a remote, desolate stand, a patch of concrete reserved for problematic aircraft or security alerts. The engines spooled down, plunging the cabin into an eerie silence, broken only by the unbuckle-bing. Passengers immediately stood up, grabbing bags. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated," Brenda Orley's voice announced, now laced with confusion. We seem to be at a remote stand. Please remain seated." Then a new voice. First Officer David Chen. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first officer. We are at a secure stand by order of airport authority. Please, for your own safety, remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened. Do not stand up. Do not open the overhead bins. This is a security matter. Cabin crew, remain at your stations." The passengers froze. Fear rippled through the cabin. A security matter. In the cockpit, Captain Rock was furious. "What the hell is this, David? I didn't call for a remote to stand. Who did you talk to?" "I didn't talk to anyone." Captain Foshen said, his face a mask of professionalism. He had been the one to relay the message from the ground, but he wasn't about to tell Rock that. The order came from LHR operations. They said code red. "That's all I know." Raw's tiny whiskey-soaked brain began to process. Remote stand. Code red. This meant a bomb threat, a hijack, a real problem. He unbuckled. "I'm the captain. I'll handle this." He stormed out of the cockpit and stopped dead. The main door, L2, was being opened from the outside. A set of mobile stairs illuminated by flashing blue lights was locking into place. The first person up the stairs was not a passenger. It was a man in a crisp, dark Aura Airlines suit. Robert Knight Elena's COO. Behind him was Mr. Harrison, the LHR station manager, looking terrified. Behind them were two uniformed London Metropolitan Police officers, and behind them was another officer with a body camera filming everything. "What is the meaning of this?" Rock blustered. "Who are you?" "I am the captain of this aircraft." Robert Knight looked at Rock with eyes like chips of ice. "We know who you are, Captain Rock." Robert scanned the business-class cabin. His eyes darted to 1A, where John Hatcher was trying to shrink into the seat. He saw Arthur Peterson in 2C, who gave a sharp nod. He saw Sarah Jenkins in 4D, her phone back up and recording. "Where is she?" Robert said to the air. "I'm here, Robert." The voice came from the back. The passengers, in defiance of the order, were all twisted in their seats, watching. Elena Vance emerged from the economy aisle. She was holding Jessica's baby Leo, allowing the mother to gather her things. She walked calmly to the front, kissed Leo on the head, and handed him back to his mother. "Jessica," she said, "you and Leo will be just fine. Mr. Harrison here will escort you personally through customs and have a car waiting to take you. Where are you going?" "A hotel near Ramstein, I think," Jessica stammered. "No." Elena said, "You're going to our finest hotel in Frankfurt first class. A car will take you to the private terminal. You will be on the next Aura flight. It's on me." "I can't." "You can. You've had a hard night. Thank you for letting me share your row." Elena then turned. She was no longer Elena passenger. She was Evie, the CEO. Her entire demeanor had changed. The hoodie now looked like a Powers suit. She walked the final 10 away. She stood directly in front of Gregory Rock. Rock's brain fogged by arrogance, and alcohol finally made the connection. He looked at the man in the suit, Robert Knight, his boss. He looked at this woman who Robert was clearly deferring to. He looked at her face. He had seen it before, on a memo on the cover of an in-flight magazine. "Vance," Rock whispered. His knees quite literally began to knock. Mance as in Vance Western Holdings. Brenda O'Malley, who had been standing by the galley, let out a small, strangled sound. The colour drained from her face. She leaned against the bulkhead for support. "Captain Gregory Rock," Elena said, her voice, clear and cold, projecting for the entire cabin and the body cam. "For the past 7 hours you have been the captain of this aircraft, and in that time you have 1. Abandoned your post in the cockpit to drink alcohol with a non-revenue passenger. 2 illegally removed a full fare passenger from her seat. 3 violated FAA and company policy by creating a hostile, abusive, and discriminatory environment. 4 slandered me to the entire plane as a disruptive passenger. And 5? She paused, her eyes drilling into his. You did it all because you looked at me and decided I was, in your exact words, a kind of person who didn't belong. She turned to Robert Knight. Robert, I believe he's had alcohol. Rock panicked. That's a lie. Officers Elena said, please administer a breathalyzer to Captain Rock and Captain Hatcher. I'm sure Aura's policy on bottle to throttle is one they are both intimately familiar with, though I doubt either of them care. Mum, the Met officer said, we'll take it from here. This is an outrage, Roar yelled, finding one last burst of bluster. The Union will hear about this. You can't. The Union, Elena said, will be watching the videos, the ones Mr. Peterson in 2C and Miss Jenkins in 4D have already sent to our legal team. Roar looked at Peterson. Peterson just smiled and raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. As for you, Elena said, turning to Brenda Ali, who was now openly weeping. You, Brenda, are the senior flight attendant. Your job, your one job, is passenger safety and comfort. You chose to be a bully's accomplice. You denied a mother warm water for her baby. You enabled this circus. He made me, Brenda shrieked. I was just following the captain's orders. You were, Elena agreed. And you will follow him again. Robert ensure Miss Alley is also tested for alcohol and taken for a full interview. Both of them are suspended effective immediately. Their flight credentials are to be revoked. They will be flown back to Nunak in coach on a competitor's airline, pending their termination hearing. And him, Elena said, pointing to John Hatcher, who was frozen in seat 1A. He is not my employee. He is, however, guilty of interfering with a flight crew and accepting service under false pretenses. Officers, he's all yours. I want him charged. Hatcher was pulled from the seat his rest over. As he was led away in cuffs, he looked at Rock. You did this to me, Greg. You save it, Johnny? Rock spat as the officer brought out the breathalyzer. Elena Vance turned and faced the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Elena Vance. I am the CEO of Aura Airlines. On behalf of my company, I apologize. This is not who we are. This performance you were forced to witness is the antithesis of everything we stand for. Because of this delay, and because of your extraordinary patience, Aura Airlines will be refunding every single one of in full, and you will each receive a voucher for a future round-trip flight, anywhere we fly in any class. The cabin, silent in shock, exploded into applause. Mr. Peterson, Miss Jenkins, Elena said, My car is waiting. I'd like you to ride with me. I need your statements. Arthur Peterson just grinned. I'll bill you, Miss Vance. But the story is free. The fallout was not just a storm. It was a Category 5 hurricane. What happened on the ground was a clinical corporate execution. What happened in the following 72 hours was a public spectacle. The moment Elena Arthur Peterson and Sarah Jenkins stepped into the waiting black Mercedes on the tarmac, the war room was activated. Sarah Jenkins, the NT producer, was in a bizarre state of journalistic bliss and human shock. You have to understand, Sarah said, her hands shaking as she held her phone. I can't just sit on this. This is the biggest story of the year. Elena looked at her from the jump seat. I'm not asking you to sit on it, Sarah. I'm asking you to get it right. You have the victim, the lawyer, and the CEO all in one car. You have the only exclusive. Arthur Peterson chimed in. What Miss Vance is offering is a controlled detonation. You run your video. You run my video. You run the police body cam, which we will get. You run the story, but you run it as CEO cleans house after horrific racist incident. "You make her the hero. She is the hero," Sarah said, looking at Elena. You sat in that middle seat for 6 hours. You took care of a baby. I've never seen anything like it. I wasn't a hero, Sarah. I was a passenger, and I was humiliated." Elena said, her voice quiet. "I'm just the only one who happened to be in a position to do something about it. Now, we're going to do something for everyone." By the time the sun rose in New York, the plan was in motion. The fate of Captain Gregory Rock. Rock blew a 009. He was over the legal limit for driving, let alone flying during the flight. He was arrested by the Met Police and held for endangering an aircraft. His union defense evaporated. The moment the Airline Pilots Association, ALPA, saw the videos and the 009 blood alcohol content, they didn't just drop him, they publicly disavowed him. Their statement read, "The actions of Mr. Rock are a shocking disgrace. He does not represent the values or professionalism of our 60,000 members." Aura Airlines fired him for cause before his flight back even took off. The FAA, in an emergency action, permanently revoked his pilot's license. There would be no hearings. His corporate arrogance was so complete that he had logged his cockpit visits with Hatcher. He had also stupidly used the onboard sat phone to call another pilot friend and brag about what he'd done. The recordings were pristine. The fate of Captain John Hatcher. Hatcher, the buddy pass rider, faced immediate consequences. He was charged by UK authorities, posted a massive bail, and had his passport confiscated. His own airline, United, fired him within hours. His crime wasn't just accepting a seat. It was his complicity in the scheme, the drinking, and the interference with a flight crew, a federal-level offense. He was a pilot with a MER 99 BAC in a passenger seat being served by the captain. The investigation would find they'd been planning this for weeks to get Hatcher to London for a party. The fate of Brenda Orley. Brenda's breathalyzer was clean, but her career was over. The testimony of Mark, the other flight attendant, was damning. The way she had taunted Elena over the PA, the way she had denied a baby hot water. She was fired for gross misconduct and failure to uphold safety and service standards. She tried to sue, claiming she was in a hostile work environment and intimidated by Rock. Arthur Peterson, on behalf of Aura, personally handled the deposition. Ms. Zali, he'd asked, "Were you intimidated when you called the CEO sweetheart? Were you intimidated when you slandered her as disruptive to 300 people? Were you intimidated when you chose to serve an off-duty intoxicated pilot premium whiskey instead of getting a mother hot water?" Brenda's lawsuit was dropped, the public relations masterstroke, while the rumor mill was just starting to churn online. Flight 101 diverted. Police swarm plane. Elena's team did the unthinkable. They preempted the story. Sarah Jenkins's piece for the New York Times, complete with video, dropped at 9:00 a.m. London time. The headline was devastatingly effective. Aura CEO flies economy, exposes racist drunken crew, fires them on the tarmac. It wasn't a scandal about Aura Airlines. It was a story of a problem at Aura Airlines, and a CEO who personally, dramatically, and decisively solved it. Aura's stock wobbled for exactly 3 hours. Then Eleanor released her own statement. It wasn't a prepackaged corporate apology. It was a video just her in the same grey hoodie in a London hotel room. "I am the CEO of Aura Airlines. But last night I was just a passenger. I was a black woman, told I didn't belong. I was forced out of my seat. I was humiliated. And I was for 6 hours powerless. What happened to me was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a disease, arrogance, prejudice, and an abuse of power. The employees responsible are gone. But that's not the solution. That's just the start." Today I am announcing a new top-to-bottom dignity and travel initiative. We are partnering with Mr. Arthur Peterson's firm to review every single policy. We are implementing new mandatory and continuous de-escalation and implicit bias training run by independent auditors. And to anyone who has ever been made to feel less than on one of our flights, or any flight I see you, I was you, and I promise you this. At Aura Airlines, everyone belongs. This is my airline, and you are all my passengers. I will not let you down. The video went viral. It wasn't a PR move. It was a leadership manifesto. Bookings from women and minority travelers surged 40% in the next quarter. A year later, the world had moved on. But for those on Flight 101, the hard karma was just setting in. Brenda Orley. Brenda was unemployable in the airline industry. Her name was toxic. The videos of her denying the baby water had been seen by millions. She lost her apartment in Queens. She moved back in with her sister in Ohio. The real karma hit 6 months later. She was working a 12-hour shift as a TSA agent at the Akron-Canton Regional Airport. It was a job she used to mock. Glorified security guards, she'd call them. Now she was one. A family was passing through her line. It was Jessica, her husband in uniform, and a now toddler-sized Leo. Jessica froze. She recognized Brenda instantly. "You," Jessica said. "I remember you." Brenda's face went white. "Next, please." "No," Jessica said, her voice shaking but strong. You were so cruel. You wouldn't help my baby." Brenda's supervisor, hearing the commotion, came over. "Is there a problem, Agent?" No, Jessica said, composing herself. "No problem at all." She looked Brenda dead in the eyes. "I just hope you've learned something." As Jessica walked away, Brenda's supervisor looked at her. "What was that about?" "Nothing." Brenda muttered, her face burning with a shame so deep it stung. She went back to scanning bags, her world reduced to 2 Oz bottles and laptop trays. Captain John Hatcher. Hatcher's life was a legal and financial black hole. He was convicted in the UK and fined $50,000 to $1,000. He was extradited to the US to face federal charges. He pleaded guilty to interfering with a flight crew to avoid a longer sentence. He lost his pilot's license. He lost his pension. His wife divorced him, taking the house. The karma, his new job. He wasn't a captain. He wasn't even a pilot. He was a safety instructor for a small unknown bus company in suburban New Jersey. He taught defensive driving to new hires. His last known address was a room at a residential hotel off the turnpike. Captain Gregory Greg Rock. Rock's downfall was the most profound. He faced the most serious charges. He had endangered 300+ lives. He served 6 months in a UK prison before being deported. The FAA fine was over $100,000. He was in every sense of the word ruined. He was blacklisted. No airline, not even a tiny cargo outfit in Alaska, would touch him. His arrogance, his authority was useless. He was a pariah. 2 years after the flight, a journalist doing a "Where are they now?" piece found him. He wasn't flying. He wasn't even near an airport. He was a long-haul trucker. He drove a 20-year-old rig hauling produce from Yuma to Boise. He was overweight, his eyes were bloodshot, and his hands trembled. The reporter found him at a truck stop. "Mr. Rock, I'd like to ask you." Rock, holding a lukewarm coffee, looked up. He saw the camera. Get out of here." He snarled, the old venom still there, but the power gone. "Do you have anything to say to Miss Vance?" To the passengers. She ruined me." Rock wept, his voice a pathetic whine. It was just a seat. I was the captain." "You were the reporter," said. Rock just stared into his coffee, a broken man in a trucker's cap, forever grounded. Elena Vance. Elena's life also changed. She still flew incognito, but now her crew knew to look for her, not out of fear, but out of pride. First Officer David Chen. He was now Captain David Chen. He was the head of the new Dignity and Travel program. Mark, the flight attendant who gave Elena the pen. He was now the head of in-flight services for the entire LHR hub. Jessica and her family. They had a lifetime pass on Aura Airlines. Elena was Auntie Elena to Leo. Arthur Peterson's firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, was now Aura's primary outside counsel. And Elena, she was at a gala, accepting a Business Leader of the Year award. They asked me, she said to the crowd, why I didn't just fire him from the start, why I sat in that middle seat for 6 hours. I did it because to fix a problem, you have to know the problem. You have to feel it. I learned more about my company in 34B than I ever did in a boardroom. Leadership isn't about having the best seat. It's about making sure every single person on the plane from 1A to 34B is treated with dignity. The applause was deafening. The story of Aura Flight 101 didn't end when the passengers were refunded. It didn't end with the firings, the lawsuits, or even the jail time. The true consequences, the hard karma of that night, were not a single event, but a profound ripple effect. They didn't just change the lives of the people in the cabin. They reshaped the very industry they were in. The first ripple began with a simple, physical letter. While Elena Vance's inbox was exploding with digital messages from senators, celebrities, and CEOs, her executive assistant found an envelope sent via standard mail to headquarters. It was written on a piece of lined notebook paper in thick, blocky pencil. It was from Bill Henderson, the construction foreman from 34A. It said, "Dear Miss Vance, I was in 34A. I build things for a living. I know a weak foundation when I see one, and I saw one on your plane. But I also saw you, and that young mother, Jessica. A good building isn't just about steel. It's about protecting the people inside. You protected her. I'm retired now, but I have my tools. If you are ever building something real, call me." Elena didn't have her assistant call. She called him herself. "Bill," she said, "I am. I need to build something real." A year later, at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany, a massive, chaotic hub for military families, in transit the Aura Airlines and Henderson family wing opened its doors. It was a 10,000 QFT sanctuary, built with Aura's money and designed by Bill Henderson, who flew to Germany and personally oversaw the foundation pour. It was not a lounge, it was a home. It had soundproofed sleeping pods for jet-lagged children, a 24-hour hot food kitchen, free laundry, and quiet rooms for soldiers to connect with their families. It was nicknamed by the families who used it the 34B wing. The second ripple came from the front of the plane. Arthur Peterson, the lawyer from 2C, had been reinvigorated. He had all the money he'd ever need. What Flight 101 gave him was a crusade. He partnered with Captain David Chen, the first officer who had been sidelined by Rock's tyranny. Together they tackled the most toxic element of airline culture, the God complex of the captain's seat. They developed what became known internally as the Chen-Peterson Protocol. It was a new, confidential, and no-fault channel that allowed any crew member from a first officer to a brand new flight attendant to anonymously flag a captain's fitness for duty. This didn't just mean alcohol. It meant fatigue, emotional distress, or most critically abusive behavior. 6 months after it was implemented, a senior Aura captain in Miami was grounded moments before takeoff. He hadn't been drinking. He had been screaming at a gate agent over a minor delay. A junior flight attendant, empowered by the new protocol, sent a simple one-word text: "Unfit." The system worked. The captain was sent to mandatory anger management and de-escalation training. Peterson, in a speech to the FAA, called it dethroning the cockpit king. The protocol began to be adopted in various forms by every major airline in North America. The third ripple was a cannonball. Sarah Jenkins, the New York Times producer, didn't just run an exclusive. She launched an investigation. Her follow-up piece, The Buddy Pass Conspiracy, was a bombshell. She proved that the Rock Hatcher incident wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom of a widespread corrupt good old boy network that traded favors, abused privileges, and compromised safety. Her report, filled with testimony from other victims, led to a full Senate subcommittee hearing on aviation safety. Sarah, no longer just a producer, was the star witness. She played her video from 4D, and the entire hearing room fell silent as Captain Raw's voice echoed, "Where your kind usually sits." The result was the Safe Skies and Dignity Act, informally known as the Vance Act. It mandated strict third-party oversight of all buddy pass and non-revenue programs. It mandated independent implicit bias and de-escalation training, not just internal corporate videos. Sarah Jenkins's work on Flight 101 and the subsequent investigation it sparked won her a Pulitzer Prize. But the final, deepest, and hardest ripple of karma was reserved for Gregory Rock. He served his time, he paid his fines, he lost his license, his pension, his family, and his identity. He was as the reporter had found a long-haul trucker, an anonymous, broken man in a world of diesel fumes and lonely highways. 2 years after the flight, he was at a truck stop in Nevada. It was 3:00 a.m. He was waiting for a dispatch, drinking burnt coffee, and staring at a small, grainy TV in the driver's lounge. A commercial came on. It wasn't a slick ad with planes. It was quiet. It showed a pilot, his face kind, his new captain stripes gleaming. It was David Chen. It showed a distinguished lawyer, Arthur Peterson. It showed a construction worker with a hard hat, Bill Henderson. It showed a smiling military mother and her son, Jessica and Leo. Then the final shot. It was Elena Vance. She was in a middle seat on a plane. She was wearing a simple, elegant hoodie. She was smiling as she helped a young mother and actress calm her baby. A voice over Elena's own said, "Aura Airlines, where everyone has a first-class right to dignity." Raw watched. His whole body went cold. He finally understood. He hadn't just been defeated. He had been erased. His worst, most hateful act of arrogance had not in the end destroyed Elena Vance. She had absorbed it. She had taken his poison and turned it into the very cornerstone of her new, more powerful, more successful brand. His humiliation of her had become her origin story. He wasn't even a villain. He was just the conflict that had made her a hero to her customers, her crew, and the world. He didn't smash the mug. He didn't yell. That would have required a passion he no longer had. He just dropped it. It hit the linoleum floor with a dull thud. The coffee spread out like a dark stain. "You all right there, bud?" another driver asked, not looking up from his paper. Raw didn't answer. He turned and walked out of the lounge, a ghost in the pre-dawn light. He was a non-entity, forever grounded, forever irrelevant. And in the bright, warm lounge, the television played the commercial again. That right there is not justice, it's corporate karma. Gregory Rock and Brenda Ali didn't just lose their jobs. They became footnotes in a story about their own irrelevance. They thought their uniforms and their titles gave them power, but they forgot where real power comes from. It comes from dignity. It comes from character. Elena Vance didn't have to say a word. She didn't have to flash a badge or pull rank. She just sat. She sat in that middle seat, took care of a baby, and let their own hatred, their own prejudice, and their own arrogance hang them. She proved that true power isn't about the seat you're in. It's about the stand you take. What do you think? Was this the greatest I'm the owner moment in history? Have you ever seen karma hit back quite this hard? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story, and I know you did, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories of justice and karma coming your way. Thanks for watching.